See about the mercantile agents, they are also called as functional middlemen. So, a businessman appoints a mercantile agent to buy and sell goods on behalf of himself. For this, he is paid a commission. So, the right what he enjoys is he can borrow money on the security of the goods. That is why he is called as a mercantile agent. So, next up, we have the different kinds of mercantile agents. We have the brokers, factors, commission agents, del credit agents, auctioneers, warehouse keepers, etc. So, in we have the brokers, factors, commission agents, del credit agents, auctioneers, warehouse keepers, etc. So first let's have a look at the broker. So a broker is a person who is appointed to bargain for one another and receives a commission for doing this service. So the commission which he receives is called as a brokerage. So the main aim of a broker is to bring the buyer and the seller together and negotiate the terms of the contract. And finally, he finalizes a contract and seals the deal. So for doing this, he is paid a commission. So he is none other than the broker. Next, let's look at the factor. So a factor is a mercantile agent. He will take physical possession of the goods and he will not reveal the name of the businessman or the principal behind it. He does business in his own name. Therefore, he takes up the liability and he also has the right to sue others also if the contract is not settled. And he has the right to retain the goods if the charges of the contract are not paid. So, he is a factor. Next is the commission agent or known as consignee. So a commission agent buys and sells the goods on behalf of the principal, and for the sales what he does, he gets a fixed rate of commission on all his transactions from the principal. He takes his own decision over the prices of the product. He has a very good knowledge about the product and the market. Therefore, he takes a possession of the goods without the title. That is, he is not the owner of the goods. He just takes a possession of the goods and he will sell the goods on behalf of the principal. But he decides on the price, on the market level, and how to sell the goods. So, he is also called as a consignee. Next is a del credere agent. So a del credere agent simply guarantees the principal for the collection of money for which the principal has done a credit sales. So for the credit sales done by the principal, he just stands guarantee to collect the money from the creditors and give it to the principal back. So here, for doing so, he gets a commission. So that commission is called as del credere commission. So here if you see, a del credere commission agent will carefully select his buyers to whom the credit is going to be extended, and based how he selects his buyers is on the basis of the honesty and reliability of the buyers. Next up we have is the auctioneers. So auctioneers are generally people who sell on behalf of the principal, and the way they sell it is a public notification will be given to the public, and the public may come and purchase the product which they desire, but they are going to purchase a product on an auction sale. That is, a huge number of buyers will be there and they will be auctioning, that is giving out prizes to the product, and the highest price will be the price of the product for which it is being sold. So an auction sales, if we take, it may be of two different types, with reserve and without reserve. So with reserve sale means a minimum price is fixed for the product. So the auction sale itself will begin from that minimum price only. Whereas without reserve, in the sense there is no minimum price fixed, even from a cost of 1 rupee they can start the auction sale. So next is the price at which the offer is accepted, that is a sale is coming to an end, is the knockdown price. So this is shown by the hammer being the striking of the hammer on the desk. So this particular act will indicate the acceptance of the bid by the auctioneer. So for doing so, the auctioneer will be given a commission on the certain percentage of the sales which he has done. So next is the warehouse keeper. So a warehouse keeper accepts the goods from the principal, the buyer or the seller only for the purpose of storing the goods for the time being. So when it is being stored, he has to give reasonable care and protection, security to the goods. So for accepting the goods, a warehouse keeper gives a warehouse receipt or a certificate to the principal. So using this receipt or certificate, it is not a title or it is not a document of title of goods. It is not a document of title of goods. It is simply the acknowledgement stating that the warehouse keeper has received the goods from this so and so principal. Next up is the different kinds of merchant middlemen. So far we have seen the different types of mercantile agents. Now we are going to see the second type of middleman, that is a merchant middleman. So there are basically two types, that is a wholesaler and the retailer. And under the wholesaler, you have four types of wholesalers, which we are going to see in detail. The first type of wholesaler is a limited service wholesaler. So here if you see, the services of the wholesaler is very limited, but the price at which his service can be availed is at a lower price. So they may not give delivery of the product, they may not give a customer credit facility to the customers. Therefore these wholesalers are called as limited service wholesalers. They may only act as storage, or they may only give products for bulk quantity but at lower prices, but they do not target on transporting or delivering the product to the retailer or the consumer. So next is the drop shippers. So here drop shippers work is also similar to the limited service wholesaler. Here if you see, a drop shipper doesn't take the possession of the goods but actually finds the seller for the order. So they have the orders in their hand, they find the ultimate They find the ultimate sellers and they pass their orders over to them by shipping them. So that's why they are called as drop shippers. So mail order wholesalers sell their products using catalogs. So they show the catalogs, and they, once the order is placed, they just hand over the product from the producer to the particular seller or buyer. So and then ships the products over to the buyer. So next is the truck jobbers. So the ultimate work of a truck jobber is they store the products which are perishable in nature in their own trucks, and they round about finding customers to purchase their products. So this is the work of a truck jobber. Next is the rack jobber. So if we take a rack jobber, they are nothing but people who we see in our supermarkets. So there are different kinds of racks over there, and in the racks different kinds of products are settled, that is displayed to us. So they are nothing but rack jobbers. So most of the products which they sell may be books, groceries and magazines, or grocery products, etc. So they display it in their own store, in their own rack, and mostly they take the physical possession of the goods, and the title of the goods also are retained by them until it is being sold. So here how they have a check on the goods is they periodically take account of the stock, of how much of goods are there in the racks, and how much of goods are being sold. So next we are going to see about the wholesaler as fully. The definition of the wholesaler, which is given by Cundiff and Still and Evelyn Thomas. So first let's look at Cundiff and Still. So he states that a wholesaler buys from the producer and sells to the merchandise to the retailer and other merchants, and not to the consumer. So the wholesaler doesn't have that much of a direct link between the producer and the consumer, but he links the producer and the retailer. According to Evelyn Thomas, a true wholesaler is himself neither a manufacturer nor a retailer, but acts as a link between the 2. So both the definitions are very simple and clear, stating that he acts as a link between the manufacturer and the consumer, manufacturer and the retailer. So next we have is the characteristics of the wholesaler. Next we have is the characteristics of the wholesaler. So the wholesaler buys the goods directly from the producer or the manufacturer. That is the first and main character of a wholesaler. He directly buys the goods. Secondly is he buys it in very large quantities, not in small quantities of 1 and 2. He buys in tons and dozens of quantities. Next is he deals with different variety of goods. Next, he employs certain agents and workers who help them out in distributing the product in the market. Next is, to be a wholesaler or to perform the function or a character of a wholesaler, you need a large amount of capital to be invested into your wholesale business. Next is he gives certain credit facilities to his retailers also. Then he provides financial assistance to the producer. That is, he gives the amount required for the purchase beforehand itself, before possessing the actual goods to the producer, which helps them out to finance their production. Next is they generally operate in cities or towns in a centrally located place. So these are the different characteristics of a wholesaler. Next, let's have a look at the functions of the wholesaler. First function is collection of goods. That is, he purchases the goods from the manufacturer or the producer in bulk and collects them for selling it to the retailers. Secondly is storage of goods. So the storage of goods is taken care by the wholesaler at once the wholesaler possesses the goods from the producer or the manufacturer. Perishable goods like fruits and vegetables, etc., also can be stored in his cold storage facility. Next is he distributes the goods to the retailer or the consumer in the market. So he takes up the function of distribution of the products also. Next, financing. So he provides finances, as we already seen in the characteristics of wholesaler. He gives finances to the producer and the manufacturer by providing them money in advance for the purchase. What he is going to do from the producer, he gives the money in advance so that it helps them out to produce a product and gives them a finance also. For the retailer, if you see, he gives credit facility to the retailer who is well known to him. Next is risk taking. So the wholesaler buys the finished goods from the producer, keeps them in his warehouse until it is being sold to the retailer or the consumer. If there is any kind of a change in demand or the change in the taste and preference of the consumer in the market, the goods will be retained by the wholesaler, safeguarded, and then sold to the consumer when required. Therefore, he takes up the facility or the function of risk taking. Next is grading, packing, and packaging. So he classifies a good, that is, he differentiates the good into different categories, he grades them. That is, if you go to a rice outlet, rice merchant, you'll have different grades of rice: 45 rupees per kg, 50 rupees per kg, 60 rupees, basmati rice, this rice. So that is nothing but categorizing the goods which he has had, packing it, labeling it, and giving it to that is nothing but branding the particular product and giving it to the retailer or the consumer. Next, providing information. So the wholesaler will have the ultimate information regarding the product which he is purchasing from the producer. So when he is in a situation to give the details regarding the product to the retailer or the consumer, he will try to educate the retailer and the consumer with the knowledge which he has on the goods. And likewise to the producer, he also gives the knowledge about the taste and preference of the consumers in the market so that they can change their product in any way if it is required. Next is transportation. So as we saw, he has performed various types of functions, and one of the last one is the transportation, because nowadays they have started giving door deliveries, and the wholesalers also take the product from the producer's area also. So once the order is ready, the producer communicates to the wholesaler and the wholesaler sends his transport to pick his order from the producer and to showcase it to the retailer and the consumer in his wholesaling shop unit. Next is different kinds of services which is being offered by the wholesaler. So what kind of service he is going to offer? First, we are going to see about the services which a wholesaler offers to the producer or the manufacturer. So first of all, over here, for the producer, he gives economies in large scale. So he buys products in bulk. Therefore, the producer will be able to produce in a large scale also. Therefore, it will reduce the cost of production per unit for the producer. That is why it is called economies in large scale. Next is assistance in distribution. So, the wholesaler collects the order from a large number of retailers who are scattered around the world and gives the orders to the producer. Therefore, he reaches out to the consumer who are scattered in different areas and distributes the goods which are required for them. Next is the warehousing facility. So at once a large amount of stock is being got from the producer, he acts as a warehouse to keep the products until it is being consumed by the consumer or the retailer. Next is forecasting of demand. Since he has the knowledge about the market, he always can forecast the demand in the market, whether it is rising or it is decreasing. Next is the publicity of goods. So the wholesaler advertises or lets the retailer or the consumer know about the goods, and it likely creates a demand for the goods. Therefore, he promotes the goods which he is about to sell. Next is financial assistance. He makes advance payments to the producers for his order, in which the producers need not be locked up with the capital. They can have a rotation of capital for producing the product. Next is a risk bearer, where he bears the risk of retaining the goods until the goods are being consumed by the retailer, bought by the retailer or the consumer. So this in turn gives him a risk of loss due to any kind of fluctuation of demand in the market or any unforeseen happenings happening. Next is the link. So he serves as a link between the manufacturer and the retailer and ultimately the consumers. So next, let's have a look at the services of the wholesaler to the retailer. What does he do? So first thing is the financial assistance. That is, he gives credit facility to the retailer, allowing them to purchase the goods without the use of money and then settling the money later on. Next is meeting the requirement. So here if you see, due to the limited capital which a retailer has, but he has to sell the products to the consumers. Therefore, the wholesaler sees to that he meets the requirement of the retailer, that the retailer need not perform an activity of warehousing the goods or keeping the goods in large quantities. He can purchase the goods whichever he requires to meet the consumer's requirement. Next is introduction of new products. So the wholesalers are the people who bring in the new product from the producer and brings it to the notice of the retailer. So after the retailer gets the knowledge, he is being innovated and given the knowledge about the product through the wholesaler. Next is price stability. Wholesaler, by storing the goods for a longer period of time, have an impact on reducing the price fluctuation in the market. That is, according to the demand, the price of the product increases or decreases. So that has been highly maintained by the wholesaler. Next is economy in transport. So often the wholesaler delivers the product to the doorsteps of the retailer itself. When the list of the products is being given to the wholesaler, the order is being delivered directly. Therefore, transportation also is being taken care by the wholesaler to the retailer. Next, regular supply of goods. So the wholesaler always buys in bulk quantities from the producer. Therefore, he has a large stock of goods and large variety of goods. So whenever the retailer requires it, he can always buy it from the wholesaler, stating that he will definitely have the possession of the goods. Next we have is the different types of wholesalers. So the first one is a manufacturer wholesaler. Here he undertakes the manufacturing of goods in addition to the sale of goods to the retailers also. Next, second type is a retail wholesaler, where he carries out both the function of selling it in wholesale or in retail trade also. So, example, we can take a supermarket who gives the products in bulk and in small quantities. Next is the merchant wholesaler, that is, he doesn't neither manufacture the goods or sells it directly to the consumer. He is just a pure wholesaler who gets the goods from the producer and sells it to the retailer. So he is divided into three types, that is general merchandise wholesaler, single line wholesaler, specialty wholesaler. So first let's look at a general merchandise wholesaler. He is a type of wholesaler who deals with groceries, electrical equipments, medicine, which is generally required by the people or the consumer. So his importance is specialization in trade, what he does. Second type is the single line wholesaler. So he deals with only one type of a product. So he is a wholesaler. For example, if he deals with refrigerator or any kind of a washing machine or a fan, he only deals with those kinds of product. They do not deviate from the product. Thirdly is specialty wholesaler. So he also deals with a single product, but the thing is he specializes in that product. So he may deal with any specializes in the product. For example, tea, Tata tea. So if we take that particular brand, say Lipton, they do not have any sub brands. They are only wholesalers in that particular tea brand. So next we are going to see about the retail business. Next, let's have a look at the retail business. So retail trade, the definition of a retail trade given by Cundiff and Still is 1 minute. So next, let's look at the definitions given by Cundiff and Still and Evelyn Thomas. First, let's look into Evelyn Thomas' definition on the retailer. So, retailer is the last of the many links in the economy chain, whereby the consumer's wants are satisfied smoothly and efficiently by the retailer. Next, we have Cundiff and Still. A retailer is a merchant or occasionally an agent whose main business is selling directly to the ultimate consumer. So, he is a person who has a direct contact between the consumer. So, he purchases from the wholesaler and sells it to the consumer. Let's have a look at the characteristics of a retailer. What type of character a retailer consists of. So he generally deals with a very large variety of goods, and he carries out business in the main market area so that he can get into contact with a large number of consumers. So he is involved in buying from the wholesaler and selling for cash to the consumer. So a retailer has an indirect relationship with the manufacturer because he buys from the wholesaler, but he is a direct link to the consumer. Next we have is the functions of the retailer, the various kinds of functions what a retailer performs. First function what he does is buying. He buys the products from the wholesaler, and after buying the product, he estimates the consumer's demand or on what the consumer likes and what they want to purchase, and then he selects the products from the wholesaler and brings it all into one roof of his own business unit. Secondly is storage. So he stores ready stock of goods in his shop, that is, which are readily available for the consumer to consume. Thirdly is selling. So a retailer sells the goods in very small quantities according to the demand, taste and preference of the consumer. Fourth is grading and packing. So here, as a wholesaler, the retailer also grades the goods which are not graded by the manufacturer or the wholesaler. So if the wholesaler doesn't grade the goods, the retailer will take up the function of grading the goods for the convenience of the consumer. Next is risk bearing. So always he has to bear the risk of stock of goods which he has taken up for sale to the consumer. So these kind of risk may be because of any uncertainty of fire or theft, etc. Next is transportation. So certain retailers give doorstep delivery to their own preferred consumers also, therefore he takes up transportation facility. Next, financing. So some retailers, like how the wholesaler grants credit facility to the retailer, because of the trustworthy consumers, certain loyal consumers who are in link with him, will get a credit facility from the retailer, and he also provides door delivery and after sales services to the consumers. Other than the functions, the different kinds of services which a retailer renders to the manufacturer and the wholesaler first is going to be seen. First is help in distribution. So the retailer is the ultimate link to the consumer. He takes up the burden of collecting the goods from different kinds of wholesalers, those who in turn buy it from the producers, and bringing it under one roof and selling it to the different kinds of consumers spread over the geographical location. Secondly is market information. So he is a person who is directly involved in the market of the consumers. Therefore, he knows the taste, preference, and the changes in the demand and supply of the market. Therefore, he has a very valid market information to be passed on. Thirdly is large scale operation. So the manufacturer and the wholesalers are reduce the trouble of making individual sales to consumers. That is, the manufacturer, the wholesaler doesn't have a direct link between the consumer. Therefore, he can operate in the market and have a relatively large scale operation with the consumer who are spread out. Next is helps in promoting. So the retailer also has a function or gives a service of promoting the product to the consumer. That is, he makes the products available to the consumer's knowledge. Next is personal attention. So the retailer is a person who has a direct contact between the consumer. Therefore, the consumer is given a personal attention to satisfy his or her requirements by the retailer. Next are the different kinds of services which the retailer gives to the consumer. First is regular supply of goods. That is, a consumer relies on the retailer for the regular supply of goods available to him. Secondly is new product information. So if any new product is being launched in the market, the information will be immediately passed over by the wholesaler to the consumer and wholesaler to the retailer, and the retailer passes it down to the consumer by displaying the product in front of their shop outlet. Next is credit facility. So the retailer provides credit facility to the consumers in order to the retailer sometimes provides credit facility to consumers who are in constant link, that is, they are loyal to the business of the retailer. Next is wide selection. So the retailer generally keeps a variety of products, a stock of variety of products which he has acquired from different kinds of wholesalers, which gives a wide range of selection to the consumers. Next are the services to the government. So here, first one is payment of taxes. A retailer collects a general service tax, GST, from the consumer and renders it to the government. Secondly, helps to improve the standard of living. So by the availability of products from him, the retailer indirectly improves the standard of living of the people in the economy. Thirdly, implementation of government policies and acts. So the retailer implements, that is, enforces the acts and the rules given by the government. By certain tobacco products which have been prohibited will not be sold by the retailer. Certain products which are undergoing adulteration, which are banned from the market, will not be sold by the retailer. So these kind of implementing the government policies is easy through the retailer. So next is the difference between the wholesaler and the retailer. First one is a link. If you take a wholesaler, he is a link between the producer and the retailer. If you take the retailer, he is a link between the wholesaler and the consumer. So wholesaler is the first link and the retailer is the last link in the chain of middlemen. Secondly is the scale of operation. A wholesaler carries out business in a large scale, whereas a retailer deals with a small scale, and the capital invested also is relatively small when compared to the wholesaler. Thirdly is a range of goods. So the wholesaler generally deals in one particular commodity or a very few variety of commodity, whereas a retailer deals with a large variety of commodities. Next is a dealing. So generally he sells, the wholesaler sells it to the retailer on credit, but the retailer usually sells the goods to the consumers on cash basis. Very few consumers are given credit basis. Then purpose of selling. So the main purpose of selling for a wholesaler is to resell it to the retailer, whereas a retailer is the main purpose is selling it to the consumer for consumption or using the product, not for reselling the product. Next is the source of supply. So for a wholesaler, the source of supply is a manufacturer, whereas for a retailer, the source of supply is a wholesaler. Next is the location in which he operates. So the wholesaler operates in big commercial cities, whereas the retailer operates in small villages or in a particular place or area called as market. So these are the different types of wholesalers, retailers, middlemen, mercantile agents, and the different chain of middlemen involved in getting the goods from the manufacturer to the consumer.